talk about the top sold and rated performance parts. And then we're just going to go over how important it is to keep your bike safe for the track and how you prep it. And then a little bit about tuning. So, Jared, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for today's chat.
Hey, did you say, Mitchell, we got Mookie with us as well? Not on video yet.
Mookie is going to be joining us soon, right?
He's rushing to his desk, but he's on the phone with us.
Oh, yes, I am. I'm here.
All right, Mookie.
Hey, Mookie.
What's up, man?
Not much, man. Just trying to rush to my desk.
All right.
Great. So, go ahead, Jared. Do you want to get started? Let's start off wherever you want to start off with.
Sure. So,
a lot to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. We over at Motorsport Exotic, I mean, we do quite a bit of track prep, and we're out with, several different organizations, obviously Fast Track being one of them. And, one of the biggest questions we're always asked, and we get phone calls all the time of, what do I need to do to be able to get on track? And what do I need to do to my bike safely to get on track? Each individual organization has different rules and regulations on things that they allow, they don't allow. So I just figured that today would be a good time to talk about just some of the basics of track, safety prep for you to be able to take your bike out and, go get off the streets and get on the track. One of the biggest questions that we always get is regarding, oil filters. Do they have to change coolant? Things like that. So I know with a lot of different organizations with track, specific track days, not necessarily racing, a lot of organizations allow you to bring your street bike, taping up the mirrors, taping up the lights, general maintenance on the bike, i.e. chain tension, and, making sure you have good tires, your brakes are good, you're not grinding your, the back of your brake pad into the rotor, things like that. A lot of it is general stuff that you can kind of walk around your bike and eyeball yourself. No, not necessarily a need to bring it to a professional shop to have somebody, do things. Ride down the street, grab a good grip of brakes in a safe, in a safe controlled environment. If you're stopping, you're probably okay. If your bike's sitting there at idle, you're riding around town, you're at 230 degrees, your fans kick on and the temperature drops back down, you're probably pretty much okay. One of the other questions we get a lot is, does my whole bike need to be safety wired? For almost every track day organization that we work with, safety wire is not required for a track day. That's going to fall more under the race prep. So drilling caliper bolts, drilling oil drain bolts, drilling, rear axles, things like that. Although definitely always a good idea, it's not necessarily required for you to get out there and get a taste of the track. I know when we're out at Fast Track, we see quite a few guys that their bikes do double duty. They might have ridden to the track and they're going to ride home, or this is their daily and their commuter. Anything that's glass on the bike, mirrors, turn signals, tail light, headlights, as long as all that's taped up, it could be with a blue painter's tape. I know a company called Track Tape or Track Brand that sells pre-cut, decals and vinyl decals for headlights and taillights. Any of that suffices to get you out there. It's not this big, great mystery. You have to spend $10,000 and buy body work and buy this and buy that and do this. You really can bang it out in a night in your garage, just kind of going over everything, and sign up and come on out and come play. It doesn't have to be as complex as, a trip to your shop and thousands of dollars in labor time and specialty parts. I mean, I don't know, Adamar or Ahmad, you guys could probably speak to it. The first time you were ever on track, I know myself, although now I'm on race bikes and whatnot, my first time on a racetrack was not on a purpose-built specialty race machine. It was the same bike I rode around town. I just followed the guidelines and got out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the biggest concern. Like, you get a brand new bike and you're worried about starting drilling axles and drilling bolts, and it's too much work and too much of a headache. But I think the bikes now, they come pretty robust right out of the box, and it's very little prep that's going to be required. Now, granted, you're going to make sure that everything is in proper order, but that's really the biggest thing is, like, technically, if your bike is running pretty well, in general, it should not take you more than half an hour to get it prepped for the track.
There's, you know, so the taping and things, those are pretty simple to do. Pretty much anybody can do them. You know, you got to tape up the wheel weights and all, but I think probably the most important thing that, and Jared, maybe you might agree with, to make sure you got taken care of in advance is make sure you got a good tire.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the only part of the motorcycle on a perfect track day, the only part of the motorcycle that touches the ground is the tire. And it is one of the most, not thought about parts of the bike. You know, everybody's worried about their suspension and getting, cartridges and getting a rear shock and getting race fuel and getting the ECU flashed. But nobody looks at the fact that their front tire is a triangle, or the fact that their rear tire has no more tread on it. So for sure, I mean, every street tire, every DOT tire, excuse me, has what we call wear bars. So if you look within part of the tread, there is generally either a dot on the tire, a little drill hole on the tire, or a little bar that kind of goes through the middle of the tread section. And it's designed for you to be able to go and look and see, am I at my tread depth? If you're flirting with being at the tread depth or being at the tread hole, it's time to change them out. You have to remember, riding on the racetrack is more aggressive for the most part on tires. You're generally riding at a higher speed. You're riding, at a different pace. It's more wear and tear. So going out with a tire that's not at least 30, 40, 50% there potentially can end your day very, very quickly.
So
Luckily,
the tire doesn't just need to be in good shape. There needs to be extra rubber. It needs to be almost new,
sure.
because you're definitely gonna use up a lot of rubber out there. Now, you're not gonna be doing burnouts or anything, but if you're a pretty skilled motorcycle rider, you're gonna be going really fast out there, right? And you're gonna use up some tire.
Absolutely. Excuse me.
So keep checking them throughout the day as well. Not that you came in with fresh tires and then.
And there's the whole tire pressure topic.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's, everybody's different. Every tire brand is different depending on what kind of rubber you have on your bike. If you're a commuter, you might have, you might be a little bit more flat in the center because you ride on the highway quite a bit. It's not advantageous to take that tire to the track, but you have to also understand that when you're riding on the racetrack, you ride a lot more on the sides of the tire. We get clients in here all the time that have tons and tons and tons and tons of meat on the side of their tire.
Hey, let me, if I can ask Mookie to jump in on a question over here with us. Mookie, you deal with a lot of students out there. You're one of the instructors over at Fast Track. And what are some of the things that you see typically on a new student that you think you might recommend that they do prepare on their motorcycle for next time? Is there something that is commonly done wrong by new track day riders that you notice?
One thing is they forget the little things. They forget that for one, the tire, the wheel weights to be taped up. We're always constantly, when we go through, helping them go through tech, they'll always forget that, or they'll forget, how important, the throttle moving back and forth, the cable is working well. So the throttle should snap back and not stay on. A lot of people let their bike, it used to be me too, back in your squid days, you let your bike be more dirty than usual, let it get dirty. But if you actually wipe it down, quite often you will notice, like if something's off, something's new on there. But if it's like a bunch of gunk and mud everywhere, and the tires, you won't notice if there's something wrong, but keeping the bike clean is more important than people would actually know, because for the simple fact that you can notice that there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, with the new riders, we tend to get a lot of bikes that are pretty dirty, and that's one of the things we always tell them, right, Mookie? Get your, spend some time, clean up your bike, put a little bit of love into it, so that you'll notice things wrong when you're actually cleaning your bike. So have that ready, and then by the end of the day, you might be overriding the bike a little bit if the suspension is really bad, and then to further that same point that Mookie said,
we get bikes into the shop all the time that are so dirty, or they have so much road gunk, all over the bike, that it actually has worked as a patch, or it has masked an oil leak, or the countershaft sprocket seal has started to go. But because it's 5 years of chain lube gunked up around there, that it literally has it's quote unquote fixed itself, but it hasn't really done anything. It hasn't fixed it. It becomes a safety hazard. You get in there, you clean all that off, and you realize, yeah, I'm leaking oil, and I got some problems. It's some stuff that I need to address.
Yeah. And another thing that you will notice about beginning track day riders, they want to go out and fly. They want to go out and fly right away and try to impress their friends and everything like that. You have all day, to pick up the speed. Like, so take your time. Many people have heard you got to go slow to go fast, because you want to understand where you're going. You understand things, and do not be afraid of asking questions. They want us. Everyone wants to see you, because it's a macho thing to do. Going to the track is kind of a macho thing to do. So you don't want people to think that you don't know what you're doing, but when you would actually, you should back down and ask all the questions you can, so you can shine later. Because understanding where the corners are and not just rushing and blowing. The first session, you see people blowing turns all over the place. So slow down. You take the first session, even the second session, to learn exactly what the track is doing. The Fast Track Riders Academy, the Fast Track Riders beginners course that we have, we spend 20 minutes, 25 minutes even, just showing you where the track is going, and at a very, very slow pace. We have plenty of time to pick it up, so don't try. Go ahead.
I would say, what's that expression? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
So, yeah. So
Exactly.
I've also heard what is it? Oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank here. Slow is fast.
Yeah.
I said, gotta go slow to go fast.
And the fastest guys that ride, they look methodical. It looks smooth. It looks effortless. You'll never see somebody setting a lap record struggling and working and dying. They go out there, and you watch these guys. You watch Rossi or Marquez do 30 laps, and it looks like they're just out there having a good time. They're just floating through the corners.
One of the things, and to tag along on what Mookie was saying, one of the things I say at the very beginning of our lectures at the RDS, at the Rider Development School, is, hey, don't try to impress your coaches, because you're not going to impress them, not one bit. So tell them to just go out there, show how well they can ride, and the coaches will take it from there. The coaches will see what needs adjusting first. Now, Jared, so we talk about these prep and first time on the track. Is there something that in particular? Yeah, you were saying you see a lot of dirty bikes, and sometimes those leaks are plugged because they're so dirty. Is there something else that you see often from the new rider? Loose cables, loose anything that you have to take care of for them at the track?
So believe it or not, actually, one of the other big things that we saw, Mookie touched on it. It surprises me to this day, and I've been doing this for many, many, many years. It surprises me to this day. When you twist your throttle and you let go of it, it should snap back. You should not have to roll your wrist back to close your throttle. And I can't tell you how many times we get bikes in here where we'll fire them up. Luckily, they're in neutral, and it just redlines. And we look at the customer and say, hey, what's going on? And he just casually walks back and pushes his throttle back closed. Like, that's a completely acceptable thing. In no way, shape, or form should your throttle stick wide open. That's the same concept as your gas pedal in your car sticking to your floor.
Coaches, the pros keep telling us, wait, you got to pin your throttle more. You got to have the throttle pinned wide open all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that could be true to some extent, but when you let go, I promise you, their throttles go back to zero.
Okay.
So we see quite a bit of that, and the other one that we get a lot of is clutch adjustment. So this is not for people with hydraulic clutches, so not quite as much of the Ducati crew. But the R6s, the R1s, the new 2020 S1000s, they're all cable clutch. and everybody always wants the cable clutch adjusted all the way out so that there's absolutely no free play on the lever of your clutch. While that's great in theory, in actuality, you always do want just a little tiny bit of free play. As things heat up, the cables stretch, the cables, everything expands a little bit. And what you wind up doing is, believe it or not, your clutch plates will start to actually engage, even with the clutch lever all the way out, because there's so much tension on that cable. What happens is you prematurely blow out your clutch, and people will start to get surging problems, and the bikes will rev faster, so on and so forth. And they never really understand what it is. You go in there and you adjust the clutch 1 or 2 screws on the on the little adjuster, and all of a sudden now your clutch works correctly. So that's another one. Keep in mind, you do not need to screw that little screw all the way in or all the way out so that your clutch is locked back into place. A little tiny bit of free play and movements, not a bad thing.
One thing I've noticed a time or two or more, and actually which just reminded me was as one of our audience here on Facebook Live mentioned, is chain tension. Can you speak for? I know that's sometimes that's a problem. So
Absolutely.
What can you tell us, Jared?
So every bike has different chain tension for what they want. Most major manufacturers have a sticker at some point either on the swing arm, or it should be in your owner's manual for the amount of chain slack that the bike wants. You want movement. It should not be static. It should not be super tight. You don't want a guitar string. Again, as things get hot, they stretch. As things get hot, they pull, they expand. So setting a chain tension super, super tight on a cold bike and then going out around the racetrack, all you're doing is wearing out the life of your chain, possibly, knock on wood, stretching it to the point of it breaking, coming around, hurting your foot, hurting another rider, possibly breaking the crankcase on your motorcycle when it spins around the front camshaft, the front crankshaft. Every bike, again, is different within the amount of measurement from the bottom of the swing arm. Suzuki's like to have a little bit more of a smile. BMWs have a little bit less. Generally speaking, Yamahas are pretty linear across the plane because they actually will have more tension on the up than they will on the down. Another thing when you're setting your chain tension, for everybody who's doing this themselves at home, is when you set your chain tension, your axles are loose. Most people will figure out one way or another that when you tighten the axle, the chain will become a little bit tighter. On top of that, if you're doing this, most people are doing it on a rear stand. When you let the bike off of the rear stand and now you load the suspension, if my hand is the front part of the bike, now that it sits a little up. That puts a little bit more tension on the chain. So it's very important to set your chain and then check it periodically. You check it after you've tensioned your rear axle. You check it again after you take the bike off of the rear stand. And then depending on if you have the ability to go ride and it's a new chain will stretch. So going out and riding it for either a session at the track or taking it up and down your block a little bit, doing a canyon run, they will then loosen up. So it is not, unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all where I can just give you a measurement. But at the same time, through the progression of the life of the chain, you will need additional adjustment. As well as the rollers. So when a chain is static and you bounce the chain up and down in your hand, it shouldn't make any noise. Meaning you shouldn't hear the rollers moving around jiggling. It shouldn't sound like loose change in your pocket. As chains start to get older and they wear out, the little rubber rings, the little O-rings that are on the rollers start to degrade, they get hard, they fall off, they break. It's normal, normal chain maintenance. As you start to wiggle your chain and it sounds like it's a bag of change, you're not adjusting anymore. It is now time to replace your chain. So it's just consistently checking it. And again, this goes back to what Mookie said to begin with. After you ride your bike, giving it a wipe down, giving it a once over kind of inspection, 5 minutes out of your day can really potentially save your life and or others and your bike.
If I can add one thing, and I know you catch this often yourself, Jared, is, one of the problems with having a chain that's too tight is actually it limits suspension movement, and that could become a serious problem if you're going through a turn really hard, or if it's a turn that has an embankment, so you're compressing it really hard. That's going to limit your suspension movement. You could potentially go down from it, right?
For sure.
So there's that, and another thing on the topic of the chain stretches when it's a brand new chain, and this is just me, but I don't, we have a tendency to put a chain on when it's brand new. We put it on and we'll say, let's make it just a hair tight because it's going to stretch. I myself, I'm not into that. I let the chain stretch naturally. I put it just the right tension as you'd want it, and then let it stretch, and then tighten it a little bit, right? But
Absolutely.
don't put it on tight knowing that it's going to stretch.
No, because again, in every chain, different quality of chains. Some chains now, some of the higher end X-Ring race chains are coming pre-stretched. So when they actually manufacture the chains in whatever mile long thing that they do, they'll heat them and they'll pull on them to get some of that initial stretch out of the chain. On top of that, when you're doing this, it's a good time to look at your sprockets for sprocket wear, for missing teeth, for bent teeth, for what we call shark finning, when all of a sudden your sprocket tooth is turned into, a chewed out little point. They're all good things. And to further what you were saying about putting on a new chain that could be too tight, is what it will actually do is it will start to pull on that front sprocket. And over time, that counter shaft or that transmission shaft that front sprocket's on will actually start to wallow out because it's got so much tension on one end of it, pulling it back. And you can injure the transmission, you can blow out seals and bearings. It's a stressed part of the bike. You gotta pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. If we were just gonna go back and summarize a lot of really great things, but I think just to summarize, I think by cleaning your bike, which is a simple task which a lot of us enjoy doing anyways, it's therapeutical for me at least. It allows you to discover and highlight some items, some defects, some issues that are just potentially about to happen or have happened. So I think that's really key. And then, it's a lot of it is just common sense. If you're riding your bike, you'll know if the throttle is sticking, then that's a problem. Don't assume that these bikes are designed that way, or you could just overcome it by twisting the throttle back. I think, just kind of start using common sense with respect to the basics of how the bike was designed to be operated, and then just take it from there. So great. I think that the next topic we wanted to cover was the importance to also make sure that you're maintaining the bike, which we've kind of touched on a little bit by, the chain adjustments, the checking for the tire pressure, checking for the tire thread wear, looking for all the things that you normally would do just to kind of make sure that you maintain the bike and regular oil changes, etc. Anything else you want to highlight, Jared, maybe with respect to at least general and basic maintenance, like nothing too deep?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few things to look for just generally on your bike, as we talked about the chain. One of the other ones that we see, we actually had a gentleman here today that rode up here from San Diego for us to work on his bike. We were tuning it and doing some performance stuff, and he had no idea that he had a blown fork seal. Fork seals are detrimental to not only the performance of the bike, for how the bike is going to handle, and for safety. You have to keep in mind, a fork is full of oil. If the oil starts to drip out through the fork seal, it drips down, and what's directly below it are the only things that stop you. So as oil comes down and leaks over time, it works its way into the brake caliper. It works its way onto your brake pads. It works its way into the rotor. You go to grab those brakes once all that stuff starts to get really caked on there, and it's like putting Vaseline all over your brakes. It's not going to work. It heats up. It heat cycles. And as it heats the rotor will absorb the metal. Metal is porous. It expands with heat. That oil starts to work its way in there. And now all of a sudden it went from just having to replace a fork seal and fixing a fork to now we have to do pads. We have to completely disassemble and clean out a caliper. We have to put a new rotor on there. And, it's safe. It's just safety. It's very easy. As we're talking about cleaning your bike, just take your fingers and run them around the bottom of your fork. If your fingers are wet, fix your fork seals.
You touched another one there, brakes, right? So at the racetrack, if it's your first time, you're going to be using your brakes a lot. Yeah, we're going to be going really fast, but you're also going to have to brake really hard. So make sure that there's a good amount of brake pad, right?
You're going to want it. And it's not, it's not like street riding. Well, not to say that you should be doing this anywhere, but with street riding, you obviously will have a little bit more time to modulate the brake and whatnot. At the racetrack, you're really moving. If you've only got 20% or 10% brake pad left by the time you get to the track, and especially at Fontana, you come down that front straight, you're only getting a couple laps in there before your front brake pads are cooked. And on top of that, then you have an oil seal problem with your fork, and you got glazed. It's all bad news. So I guess, I mean, to really sum this up, spend the 15 minutes and start at the front of your bike and just touch everything. And if something feels wet or greasy or not right, call somebody, ask for help. You know, go on the Fast Track, go on the Facebook page. We're all here for you. We'd rather we get it handled before you come to the track and you walk through tech and we have to tell you, hey, sorry, this isn't okay.
Yeah, so for starters, just go through a quick check off the top of my head. Check your tires, make sure there's 80% wear. Check your front brake pads, especially make sure there's at least 50 or 60. I'm just gonna throw a number out there percent. Check for leaks, front seals and engine. Check your chain tension. You know, make sure that the wheel weights aren't falling off the bike. Got to tape that stuff up. And if you're driving your bike to the track, you know, bring some tape with you so you can tape up the headlights and everything, right?
The throttle snapping back and tire pressures.
Yeah, there's tire pressure. There's also back in the day, you know, it's mainly for racing, you know, and I think Fast Track actually back in the 1990s required replacing the radiator fluid with water wetter, but nowadays on the track on racing, yes, but track days generally you don't have to do that, so you're fine, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and there's a very big, you know, differentiator between a track day and a sanctioned race weekend in regards to what needs to be done to the bike. You know, you're not going to sign up for a race weekend with blue tape on your headlights. It's not going to fly. But again, we're talking about a track day. So everything you just touched upon 100%, and just taking a few minutes to walk around your motorcycle. You know, the biggest thing that we stress to our clients is while everybody wants to put stickers on it and make their bike look super awesome and do all this, you know, cool vinyl wraps and everything else, this is a machine. Machines fail, parts fail, things break. If it's not worth your life to spend 10 minutes to take a look at everything, keep in mind that if you go down on a racetrack, there's other people on the racetrack with you. And I'm sure they would be super appreciative of you taking 15 minutes to walk around your machine and making sure that, you know, parts aren't shooting off as we all tip into a corner together.
I think Mookie just joined in. I think if Mookie wants to start the video for him, looks like he's back in. I think he's still setting up. Anyway, oh, there we go. All right, Mr. Fast Track. I think I got you. Let me unmute you here. You're muted, Mookie.
I think all the trophies behind you, Mookie, speak for the resume right there.
There you go. I think we can hear you now, Mookie.
Love it.
Good.
Great.
Yeah, this is great stuff, you guys. Yeah, well, this question keeps popping up on the live stream is tire pressure. I know there's not one answer for every tire. Every tire is different, but generally speaking, would you say it's less than what's engraved on the sidewall of the tire, Jared?
100%. What's engraved on the side of the tire is a manufacturer's suggested tire pressure. So what that means is that is the tire pressure that Michelin, Dunlop, Pirelli, BF, whoever it is saying in the most optimal conditions on the best piece of road with the best tailwind and the best fuel on the best bike is going to give you the longest life on that tire so that they can tell you that your Q3 Plus will last 600,000 million miles. That is not optimal grip. That is not optimal carcass flex. That is not what you want for pressure buildup. A cold tire on a hot day can grow anywhere from 3 to 7 pounds. So you set a tire at 42 or 44, which I think some of these new tires are saying. You come off the track at 50 PSI on your back tire, you're on an ice skate. Your contact patch is like less than that. The performance tires are designed to flex. One of the biggest arguments that most people, Pirelli versus Dunlop comes within carcass flex and how the actual tire bends and snaps back coming out of the corner, under braking on that front tire when it stops, does it mush the front out to give you a larger contact patch. When you have the appropriate amount of of pressure within your tire, that's going to allow that tire to flex for better grip. A larger contact patch is more grip obviously within range. That does not mean go out there with 5 PSI on your tires. That's not going to go over very well either.
The tire will come up very quickly.
Yes, yes, you will be very upset. Fork seals and chain will be the least of your problems. But each tire, every tire vendor, GG out at Fast Track or Dunlop when we're out at CVMA or whatever it may be, they all will tell you different tire pressures. And there is not one right or wrong answer. I'm sure, I've ridden with Mookie before on the track at different, ride groups in the past over at Willow and whatnot. I guarantee you that him and I don't run the same pressures. We might run the same tires. He might want 1 more pound in the front and I might want, 1 less pound in the rear. There's a range, and as long as you're within that range that any professional mechanic, pit crew chief, or tire vendor gives you, you'll be okay. But do not try and go out there at 40-something pounds.
For race tires, it's generally, I think it's safe to say that for race tires, it's quite a bit more specific. It's within a pound or 2 at most. Pirelli tells you to put, 30 pounds cold on the front and 20 pounds cold on the rear or whatever. You better stick to something close to that. But if it's a street tire, you have a little bit more flexibility. I'm guessing with the sport tires that come on your bike, you just purchased a new motorcycle. Those sport tires that come with it, they're really good. Once they get, you can't go racing on them, but you can drag your knees on them at a racetrack. But there's a little bit more flexibility with the pressure there, right?
For sure. Again, a street tire is designed for a wider audience. It's for longevity. It's for multiple asphalt types. They encounter rain. We're talking potholes. So on and so forth. So those are not, as you said, as much of a niche, end user as a racer is. So yes, a race tire, you can go 4 or 5 PSI in either direction, a street tire, 4 or 5 PSI, 6 PSI in either direction, and still be well within the limits of where you should be. You got to keep in mind, very seldomly are you racing 2 up. On the street, you might have 2 up. You put another 150-pound person on the back, that's going to change not only the weight bias of the bike, but it's going to change how much pressure is directly onto that rear or front tire. So you might up your pressures a little bit more if you're going to run with a 2 up person. This way, it counteracts. And again, like you said, the race tires, yes, they have a window of a few PSI any which way, but each brand is very specific. Back when I raced, with Moto Yard, we were on GP8 Pros, and I think we were running 19 or 18 in the rear, hot off the warmer, maybe 20 in the rear. Whereas now some of the race tires were at 24, 25 hot off the warmer, 23 hot off the warmer. So every brand will have its numbers that you want to stick to. Don't think because you ran, a Super Corsa today and you're running a Michelin tomorrow that they're the same numbers. You'll find that the bike will change drastically.
And it's common for the front tire to be quite a bit more pressure than the rear.
It should be. You're getting, so you have about a 70-30 bias in braking when you grab a motorcycle front brake. 70% of your braking is done on the front. Hence, there's 2 of them, and they're much, much larger, the discs. So when you put in lower pressures and you grab the front brake, what you're going to do is you're going to transfer all that, not only rotational mass, but you're going to transfer all that weight directly onto that front tire. If you ran a softer or a lower pressure on that front tire, like you do on the rear, if you were to go and grab your brakes, you're going to mush that tire down to just flat. And that's not what you want. The tire won't be able to hold itself up. So yes, tire pressures in the front are generally higher than they are in the rear.
Yeah. And maybe just one thing, Jared, to reiterate, like riding on the street maybe at 70-30, but for the most part, when you're riding on the track, you could literally get away without having a rear brake at all. You could do 100% of the braking with the front tire. So you are going to be hard pressed. And that's really what, so that's why you definitely need to have a higher pressure in the front. And not only that it changes your contact patch, but at the same time, that's, you have a smaller volume, but a higher pressure to keep that tire on the rim.
Oh, for sure. And I had a friend who recently passed away, but he actually didn't run a rear brake on his bike at all for the longest time. It was non-existent. He actually machined spacers to remove The caliper, he removed the rotor. I mean, he didn't run a rear brake. It was just not something that was in his repertoire. I'm not recommending that, but there are some riders that don't touch it.
So yeah, you know, for the racetrack, yeah, that's one of the first things we discuss in the RDS, right, Mookie? No, don't touch your rear brakes unless you happen to go off track and hit the grass or something. Then you probably need to motocross a little bit and use your rear brakes. But is often Mookie, often all of these students that come in, they're more used to using the rear brake, which is, you know, what they were taught to ride on the street. We're not saying that it's wrong or anything, but on the track, things are a bit different for the track purpose. Is that ever a problem, Mookie? Do you run into students where we tell them, hey, you know, we tried them, you need to use your front brakes more now? Do they catch on right away, or is it a big deal?
They always used it, but they just never used it as much. They never used it as much as it, and never realized it, because you don't, when you press on the back brake, you're not still slowing down that fast. You know, you'll really have to slow it, like take a lot longer to slow down. You know, and but yeah, the transfer, you know, like their previous thinking from rear brake to front brake, it's eye-opening. And that's one of the great things that you learn in our academy and our RDS school, is like how to do that. We have specific session just how to brake. And even to this day, myself, I'm working on how to brake. You know, I have 14 championships and still working on how to brake. So brakes is like imperative to learning how to get around the track safely and quickly.
You know, I'm actually going out to the Eric Bostrom camp tomorrow, and he does a lot of braking drills, and that's specifically what I'm doing too. It's like you can never you can never be perfect on it. It's always a lot of training, a lot of practice.
Definitely a game changer.
It you know, and it's always changing. I mean, every track, I've ridden thousands and thousands and thousands of laps around some tracks. And every time, I mean, the track doesn't change. Where I'm going, where the apex is, what's over the hill is always the same. But the temperature is different. The amount of fuel on my bike is different. The bike might be different. The wind might be different. So you are always adapting, you know, to using front brake, using some rear brake, using, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to get around. There really isn't a perfect formula. And I'm sure Mookie can attest to this also. You on paper, it's all the same. But when you get out there, you tweak it a little bit. It's just how you get around.
Also, another thing I wanted to rehash on the tire thing that you guys were like talking about, how the pressures are. But there's a lot to it, and we can definitely have a session specifically
just
on tires, because it's that important. Which Imad and Adamar was talking about. It's more than that. It's like so much more, because when you're talking about, you have a window, I have, you know, when you're racing and stuff, you have a little bit more of a window, but it's because how much rubber do you have left on your carcass? What are the road conditions? Like at one track, I'll be running 37 in the front, and another track, I can run 40. Like at Laguna, like I'll run, you know, 39, 40. You know, it just depends how smooth the track is, and you know, the track surface is everything. So you can play with the pressures, but you should also always talk to the person, the specialist that you have. You know, 61 DTC at Fontana or wherever you are. Ask what the general norm is, and then you stick kind of with that, because it's
that's for the advanced level rider. There's a lot. It's a never-ending topic, right? For the first, you know, for the beginner rider, it's definitely something to emphasis importance on, but you know, a couple pounds, just as long as you're within a couple of pounds of what you're supposed to do.
And at the end of the day, it's also the bike weight, the rider weight. There's a lot that goes into it. And how hard you hit the brakes, and you know, because all of us hit the brakes at different bar levels, you know, so all of that plays into the equation. It's very complex, like Adamar said, with respect to a very advanced rider, but also for the beginner rider. I think, you know, if we have a good range recommended by by the experts, I think I've just kind of summed it up. It's that you should just stay within that range, try it out, and then, because we had another session, we talked specifically about feel, and once you start feeling that feedback from the bike, then you'll know whether you need to go higher or lower.
Yeah.
So I think, but you gotta start with the art of anchoring, that first initial step. Where do you want to start at? You know, so start within that range and then work your way closer to the bottom end of it or the higher end of it, but stay within that range.
I agree.
For sure. And like you said, I mean, it's not, we could talk days and days and days on tires and compounds and pressures and how many laps are left and flipping tires. And there's a lot more to it. But for the guy coming out for the first time, talk to your tire vendor, make sure your pressures are an acceptable pressure, and go out there and have fun. Do not stop in the corner and pull out your tire pressure gauge. You just got to be close.
Yeah.
And on top of that,
sorry, go ahead, Mookie.
No, I was going to add on to that. It's better to be safe than sorry in all sports. And so if you have a chance and you can do a new tire, it's always best to start fresh, because as you watch Moto America, as you watch World Superbike, as you watch MotoGP, you never see them out on a scrub tire. They're always starting fresh. They always start. And I ride Moto America from year to year, and it's the same thing. I don't want to spend all the money, but I have to, because it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, all of my racers that race for us, and with all of our championships, is the same thing. If you can get fresh rubber, you want fresh rubber. It only works as good as your rubber. Like I said when we first started this, that's the only part of the bike that touches the ground.
My rule of thumb is, when you're in doubt, change it out. If you have any doubt that the tire has been through many heat cycles, or it's not feeling good, or you're not getting the grip that you want, whenever you are doubting it, if it crosses your mind, my rule of thumb might change it.
So one other thing just to touch upon real quick, to follow your when in doubt, change it out. We have a lot of clients who, because of this COVID, they've had a lot of downtime. People are getting restless and bored. They're going, all right, I want to go ride my bike again, and I'm pulling it out of the the back of my garage and untarping it and blowing off the cobwebs. And they come into us, and tires. So 2 points: tires should not be blue. There's something called a bluing of a tire, and it's what we call heat cycling. So tires have a certain amount of oil impregnated into the actual rubber. That's what makes the rubber malleable. As time progresses and the tire heat cycles and heats up and cools down and heats up and cools down, or consistently stays cool, it will actually start to force all that oil up to the surface of the tire. That's what we call a bluing tire. You'll see it around the sides and the middle of the tire, where it gets that almost a blue sheen to it. That's not necessarily a tire that you want to run unless you know the history and the lineage of that tire and how long it's been sitting. On top of that, if you look on the side of the tire, there's something called a born-on date. It's usually 4 numbers. It's a week and a year, 2218, 2917, whatever it may be. Tires have a shelf life. Just because they sat on your bike and you only did 2 laps on them back in 2014 does not mean that you can bring your tires out and go ride the racetrack right now. Those are going to be rocks. Those are all the oil is going to have seeped out of it and pulled up to the surface. It's not going to flex the way you want it to flex. So visually inspect them, check your pressures, and you'll see that born-on date. It's usually inside of a little tiny oval. And it's 2 numbers for the week and 2 numbers for the year. It's on every tire manufacturer out there. Again, call your local tire shop, tire vendor, whatever it is. And if you're unfamiliar with how long they should have been sitting, just ask. But if you've got tires on there from 2016, because that's the last time you rode their bike, I'm going to make sure you're way behind me. I don't want to be anywhere near you.
Okay, quick question here. We may have touched this already, but here's just to answer it straightforward. Would you recommend a new rider to the track to change out his street tires and put on a dedicated track tire?
So, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. If you can afford it and you feel as if your pace is there, then by all means, a track tire right off the rip, whether it be a Q4 or a Pirelli TD, those are track-orientated tires. Those are designed to heat up quickly and maintain heat and consistent pressure throughout your laps. A brand new track rider who doesn't have warmers and isn't quite up to pace is not going to benefit from being out on slicks. It's actually going to be dangerous. The tire will never get up to temperature. You're never going to be going fast enough or braking hard enough to keep heat in the tire, to keep a stable pressure within the actual tire itself. So is it worth changing out to it? If you can afford it, a track tire such as a Pirelli TD Or, you know, I see Rich is talking about a Q3 or Q3 plus, which is a very good choice. A Q4, so on and so forth, the Pirelli SC. Those are great options. They're going to be homologated DOT tires. You can ride them on the street. I wouldn't necessarily 100% recommend it, but you can do it. I just wouldn't go out there again on something that's ancient. And if, you know, you need to pick the tire that's within your skill level. A new rider taking a new racer school who has only done 5 laps in their life around the racetrack, generally speaking, is not going to benefit. It's going to hurt him by putting on a set of slicks.
So
It's just not safe.
So to summarize a little bit, you know, a race tire, if you're at race pace, yes, you need a race tire. But if you're not, you know, and you, let's say you purchased a bike and you purchased a race bike, you're new to the track, and they say, hey, just put on race tires. That's what the bike is set up for. So you put on a new set of race tires. Just remember, that tire doesn't work unless it's up to temperature. So you better either have tire warmers on it, or go out there and get a gradually increasing pace to get it up to temperature. Because on that first lap, a street tire is going to be better in some cases than a race tire. Okay, right?
For sure.
Then there's the track day level tire, which is a good in between a sport tire and a race tire. It's a little bit more forgiving on the warm up lap, and it performs really well, and it's probably maybe a little bit more affordable than the race tire.
And you
Perhaps.
don't need to have a tire warmer as well.
And you
Tire
don't need-
warmer.
yeah, just still need to build up a little bit of temperature on it. And then there's the flat out the sport tire that comes on the bike from the dealership if you bought the new bike. And here's my experience with that tire. That tire on the first lap, it's awesome. Okay. No, I'm not telling you go drag your knees on that first lap, but it grips better than all the other stuff if it's cold. Okay. Second thing that my experience that I have with that is, it actually, once it's up to temperature, it actually grips really, really well, up to a certain point. Once you're really going through a flying lap, and you have to be really going really fast for this to happen, then it starts to feel a little greasy out there because it gets too hot, and that tire just isn't designed to be performing at that level. And that's when it starts to slip a little bit. At least it's a bit forgiving. So, you know, for a first track day rider, you know, I think maybe, I don't know, I would say you're okay with the sport tire. A track day tire is always better, of course. If you're near intermediate level rider, then you need to be at least on a track day tire, or if not a race tire.
There's quite a bit that goes with it as well, with the slicks. And, you know, we see it a lot with some of the track days that we ride with, and some of the other guys that we see out there when we're out supporting people. You put a tire on a tire warmer 5 minutes before you go ride, it has done absolutely nothing. A tire warmer needs to be on a tire for 30, 40, a half hour at least for it to generate heat through the carcass. When you're heating a tire up, we're not heating the top layer of the tire. That's not what we're talking about when we say that we've got heat in our tire. We're trying to get the carcass of the tire, that inside bit, that base layer, to get up to a certain temperature so that it allows the tire to flex the way that the tire is designed to flex. So the same thing that we tell a lot of people, when you put a tire warmer on, say, how long do I have to leave it on for? Touch your wheel. Your wheel itself should start to get hot. You should feel warmth within the wheel of your bike. If you put your hand behind that tire and you feel temperature on the wheel, that tire warmer has heated the tire, heated the carcass, and is now transferring it to the wheel, in which case you can safely say that you're at temperature. But going to a rider's meeting, coming out of the rider's meeting, getting suited up, putting gas in your bike, getting first call for A group, and then flipping on your tire warmer and running out there has done absolutely nothing.
Yeah. So great. Maybe just for the sake of time, I know, sorry, we're taking a little bit longer, Jared and Mookie, than we initially wanted to kind of hold you back for. But so maybe we want to catch up on one more subject, maybe get your opinion and Mookie's opinion with respect to tuning, like how, if you're a new rider, how much should you spend on new parts, or what would you recommend? What are the parts that in your opinion, kind of gives you the best bang for the buck?
It
Like
becomes,
go
yeah. I mean, it definitely is bike by bike, cases. Some bikes come with better parts in certain areas than other bikes do. I won't get into individual bikes. I don't want to offend anybody and make anybody feel like their bike is subpar compared to another brand. One of the best selling things that we sell here in the shop, and we probably do anywhere from 6 to 10 of these a day, are Brembo master cylinders, brakes. Brakes slow you down. Brakes stop. Brakes are more important than going fast, because anybody can go really, really fast. But if you can't stop, you really shouldn't be going that fast. So with brakes, we're looking for modulation. And by modulation, I mean front end or lever feel. So on a lot of stock bikes, when you actually grab the brakes, and for this conversation, we're talking about non-ABS bikes, you're feeling what those front calipers, what those pads are doing, how much bite they're actually grabbing onto the rotors. When you start to tip into your apex, if you're trail braking, you need to be able to feel all of that at your finger, so that you know when that front tire is starting to skip or wants to tuck or fold or whatever it may be. So we are huge advocates for good quality pads, good quality either stainless steel brake lines and or a Castrol SRF or an RBF brake bleed, so it's good quality fluid. But the master cylinder to me is extremely important for you to have front end feel, for you to really start to hone in the craft of feeling how your bike transitions into corners, under braking, when you let off the brakes, to be able to maximize what you're doing on your lap out there.
Okay. So anything else, like maybe rear sets, maybe like really,
Yeah. I mean, ergonomics are detrimental to a sport bike. Everybody's going to be different in regards to their height, their inseam, where their knees are. Proper ergonomics with where your body is in relation to the tank, where your knees are in relation to the side of the tank, making sure you get a good lock on the inside or outside of the tank when you're turning with your knee. You'll see a lot of guys running around with stomp grip or traction pads to help improve that lock on. So getting rear sets on there to get your feet up or back or down or in or out, whatever it may be, is only going to help your ergos. And by helping your ergos, it makes you more comfortable. And to kind of go full circle, if you're more comfortable, you're more smooth. And if you're more smooth, you're faster. So same thing, clip-ons, certain people like them in or out or whatever it may be. Getting a comfortable ergos on the bike, I would say, is extremely important. Also for the longevity, being able to go out there and turn 6 laps on a bike is great, but can you do 6 laps for 8 sessions? And if you're all cramped up and it doesn't feel good, you're not going to be enjoying your day. And every rider.
Jared, sorry if I interrupted. If you can continue finishing, but the one topic here, flash ECU and exhaust. I'll let you finish whatever you're saying, but jump in on that topic, maybe.
Flash ECU and exhaust. Those are power adders. I work with other people as well with brand new bikes right out of the factory. We put tires on them and we go out there and we ride. 95% of the bikes that come from the dealership nowadays are more than capable of doing a track day, or even some of the new bikes, the 2020 S1000. Put it in race bodywork and slap a set of slicks on there and let's go race. I don't think it's detrimental. Everybody wants their ECU flash. They want more power. They want it to be more linear. They want it to be more smooth. They want to de-restrict it. They want the sound of an exhaust, so on and so forth. In my opinion, when I build a bike for one of my clients, I start with brakes and ergos before I get into building more power. More power just means that everything's going to happen a lot faster. And if you're not already ready for what's going to happen at the speed that your bike comes from the factory, why do you want to make things happen faster?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Mookie, what do you think? I mean, you've coached students from almost beginner level to not almost actually at beginner level to very advanced riders. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you agree? I mean, to make sure to keep the rider safe, we really don't want to need to give that rider more power when they can't handle the initial power that they have already in the bike.
I have a total different take on it. I'm a coach. I've been coaching for a long time. And like you said, I've been coaching from the beginner level all the way up to pro level. So for me, a good set of sets will make it, you know, so you can be comfortable. But I'm gonna tell you guys, like I tell every one of my riders, you know, the team that I have and everything. If Mark Marquez can go out there on a 400 stop with the janky tires and all and beat me, you know, and beat me on a 400, and so the power doesn't matter. You know, he's doing it with stock rear sets. So, but even though rear sets really make a big difference. So my biggest recommendation to anybody who's listening right now, if you want to start getting into track days and eventually into racing, your best spent money would be in going to RDS school and then taking more and more classes. Because like I said, as advanced as or as much experience as I have, there are people that go out there on a half the motor and on a stock bike and are running circles around me. So what's really key is really understanding how to ride the bike and understand how to brake correctly, how to, you know, just really understand how to ride a track and how and your way around a bike, you know. So
But I think half the battle is looking good and sounding good.
Yeah.
Like so.
And,
so,
and it's bragging rights, right? It's bragging rights.
right.
That's what becomes dangerous, because at the same time, like Mookie just said, you send somebody out there on a bone stock bike that's going to run laps around you. You all look the same when you go down the front straight at 150 miles an hour. Nobody's going, oh, he's got light tech rear sets, he's got a different exhaust, he's got GP suspension. You're just going like that and you're gone. So not to, you know, to piggyback off of it, but it is the training is the experience is paramount.
Now,
Yeah.
one thing that I think we can all agree that, yeah, go spend a lot of money on it, is some
Gear.
good riding gear, which is one of the topics here on our audience.
Everybody on this call has been down, I assume.
Unfortunately,
Who, me? Never.
I would trade every mod I've ever done on every race bike to be able to develop a suit that guarantees my safety. That's just, I don't care what else would be out there. It wouldn't matter. If somebody could develop something that promises that we're all going to be safe, that trumps
the D-Air
like
technology is getting
Yeah.
us closer.
That's a little scary
sure.
though. If everybody goes on a motorcycle feeling that they are invincible because of their gear, that will create a lot of danger around them, because now they're going to push a lot harder and they may end up hurting somebody else who's not wearing that proper gear.
that gear, that airbag.
But no, absolutely. Gear, you know, and Mookie brought up a really excellent point, which is really invest in yourself first. That's like the first and foremost. Really invest in yourself, invest in your training, invest in everything, because like you mentioned earlier, Jared, typically most bikes that come out of the showroom floor, they just already got way too much power. They already the rider will not be able to ride them at the maximum, you know, for the majority of the riders, you're not able to ride them at that level.
For sure. I mean, when we raced for BMW a couple of years ago, we spent the majority of the time, I mean, this is on an advanced level, we spent the majority of our tuning and ECU time and track time writing traction control maps to just be able to get any of the power that the bike naturally made to even go to the ground, because these bikes are so powerful now. People don't realize that everybody wants 200 horses. You're not using 200 horses. It's just what it is.
Right. It's usable horses what we need, right? So,
Yeah.
And pointing the bike so that it goes forward, not upwards. So
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So I'm sorry, you know, like I said, we're almost out of time, but maybe let's end it and kind of summarize. Let's just go back and summarize everything. You know, your recommendations for track day preparations, your recommendations with respect to tuning, recommendations with respect to how important it is to keep your bike in tip-top shape and your safety, and most importantly, how to just have fun.
Like we said at the beginning, the most important, I mean, not the most important, but one of the most vital things that I can suggest, and we've all said it so far on this call, is to familiarize yourself with your own motorcycle. That does not mean go out and rent a pressure washer and pressure wash every bit of paint off your bike at 10,000 PSI because you want it to be sparkly clean. But take a rag and start at the front and touch everything and work your way to the back and familiarize yourself with everything that's on there. So that if something seems out of place or not right, you know right off the rip. Safety, safety second to nothing. And that's the first step, is making sure your equipment is ready to go.
100%. Mooks, from your side, what's your recommendation?
The biggest recommendation, get a great set of new tires. If you can do it, get new tires, because that's super important. And invest in yourself. Like I said, like, go slow to go fast, understand how to ride, because you see people like me on these little bitty motors coming by these people with the big motors who blow by you. You know what I mean? Because it's not about how much power you have. It's, do you understand the bike and how to ride?
Absolutely.
The last thing for me to throw in there, and I know we keep dancing around it, and we've talked about it. This is not an ego contest. And unfortunately, anytime you put the word race or racetrack in the sentence, every guy, we tend to puff our chests and want to make this into some sort of ego contest. There is always going to be someone faster than you. I don't care where I ride, where Mookie rides, where anybody on this screen rides. Somebody out there can blow our doors off without thinking twice about it, like we are in, new rider school or NDS. So being able to go out there and check your ego out the door, and realizing that you're out there to enjoy yourself with your buddies, with your family, with your friends, learn, be safe, not worry about cops, and have a good time is paramount to the whole thing. Because if you go out there and white knuckle the hell out of your bike, man, you're in for one heck of an uphill learning experience.
Absolutely. And this is like really one of our clients said something so important. It resonates with that so much that it's something to remember forever. Your ego is not your amigo. So
that's good.
All right, Adamar, anything else? Any more questions? We take one more and then we end it, if there's any.
No, I think we got great interaction here today. This is awesome. Great job, you guys, on answering a lot of diverse questions here. So I think we can let these two guys go.
All right. Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me. We appreciate it, and we'll see you guys out there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Mookie. Thanks, Adamar.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Later, guys.